Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hola, hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. We are a Spanish speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Nos vemos por ahí.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Gotta let it go. So fast to freedom. Just tonight together. Here everybody's singing.你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 25th, 2023. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you would like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the one little red box that says sponsors podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside, as always, your other host, Case Slow. In Case, we're almost through it. We are almost through King of Gate 2023. How are you feeling right now? Just in general, not even about the tournament. Just in general.
I'm well. I had a good weekend. It's very hot outside, which I like. I've got some baseball on in the background. I certainly can't complain about a lot of things right now for my own scale, which is, I have low standards of what to expect out of life, but nevertheless, the scale is on the right side of things right now. Things are going okay. How are you, Mike? Unrelated to Dragongate.
We are through the Heat Dome, which was when Texas decides when 105 is not enough, that's when it gets to 110, 108, and they call it the Heat Dome. So it's something that I know I've been going on about this for weeks, but like
no, it's 110 degrees. I have a pet peeve. I have a pet peeve as somebody who works in the audio industry about people talking about the weather on their forms of audio. But when it's an event, when it's 100 plus, you get the right to talk about it.
But it's just adaptation, what it boils down to, at least at this juncture for me. I'll say it's completely destroyed our garden. Like, it's not that we're trying to be homesteaders over here, but we just decided we wanted to grow some flowers, some vegetables, just having a yard.
What are the veggies you're working with?
Right now it's
I guess that you were
squash.
working with.
Yeah, we have a elevated planter that has 10 or 12 tomato stalks, and then a couple of other planters with squash and cucumber. But it's just one of those things that, like, you put UV blankets or there's like sheeting that can help protect a little bit of that, and you start off with things that are supposed to, like, it doesn't work on the SPF scale, but it's like 50% reduction, and it's just like this white cloth, and it's like, oh, okay, I could see the sun goes through it. No, doc. We're up to 98%. This thing I have seen be used as like theater scrims. It is that heavy of a thing that's like, sun's not supposed to get through this. And then I look at the plants. I'm like, is this actually helping or cooking them? And allegedly it's not, but our plants, it's rough out there. But we're getting ready for the fall planting. The fall is going to be the real rollout. And we have a lot of stuff going for that.
What's in store for fall?
Well, a lot of gourds. I mean, first and foremost.
Okay.
I mean, we have various squashes, and
I like squash. That's a good one. I was afraid you were going to say green beans. That is the worst food there is. I've never enjoyed a bite of a green bean.
You know, I was exposed to a lot of growing of green beans and canning and jarring green beans as a kid. That like whatever opinion I had of green beans was pretty much like forced out of me by like the third straight week that I would smell my grandmother preparing green beans for jarring.
Yeah, it's such an old person food. If you're young and you like green beans, that's weird. They're awful. I hate the texture. I hate the smell. I don't even like the way they look. That, like, you know, look, unsurprisingly, not a big vegetable guy, but there's something like, you know, I can eat a lot of things. I don't mind. I'm not a picky eater, but I really can't eat green beans. That's kind of one of the few, like, I have to refuse that if it's offered. I don't want it even. They're terrible. The canned ones are bad. The homegrown ones are bad. It's all awful. That's a terrible food.
It's something that I think that I don't know if it's just like changing cultural tastes or whatever changes in school lunches. I feel like, though, that green beans, by and large, we are leaving the era of green beans just because I think that you're right. It's such like like an old person food that like the only time that I remember like actively having green beans on my plate, and you know, I'm a bit older, but the only time I ever remember seeing those were school lunches. That's it. I don't think they're even going to be in school lunches much longer.
No, I'd love to know what a modern cafeteria school lunch is like, because even now it's, you know, I graduated high school 6 years ago, so it's been a while for me, and I felt like I was on the cusp of a generational change where I think technology in high school is so much different than when I was there, and I would imagine the lunches are different. I mean, I'm younger than you. I lived through Michelle Obama making school lunches, air quotes, healthy, and in central Indiana, the vitriol and the hatred for that harlot that came with it. You know, all of a sudden we couldn't have, you know, potato chips and fried chicken and a soda for lunch. We had to mix in something green, and there are a lot of muttering teachers, you know, for communism, fucking Michelle Obama can't have what I want for school lunch anymore. A lot of that, but I would imagine it's gone up even another level.
Yeah, and even like I would have to imagine that these are the weird things that I lay awake at night tossing and turning, and I can't sleep, so I think about these kind of things. I have to imagine that the school cafeteria over like the last 25 years is so like different from what it used to be, where I imagine like 80s, early 90s, a lot of deep fryers in there. So like you'd be getting the chicken nugs, you'd be getting the fries and stuff like that. I wonder like, what does the cafeteria kitchen look like nowadays? Because like there has to be like these massive corporations doing just like massive meal prep. Like, what do they have? Just a whole bunch of microwaves to heat up like the accredited meals?
Yeah, I think it's like Gordon Food Services is one, and I would imagine they just provide so much. I mean, we can blame this on Michelle Obama, we can blame this on Morgan Spurlock, you know, whoever else exposed school cafeterias for being unhealthy. It's their fault. It's a damn shame.
Hey, the biggest thing was, at least growing up, was my school on Fridays got Chicken Express. I don't know how they got it, but they got fast food fried chicken, and that was like everyone looked forward to Chicken Express Day. Oh yeah. That was it, and it was something that like going Chicken Express now, like 25 years later, and I'm just like, oh my god, how did my heart not already clog to death?
Is Chicken Express the name of the restaurant?
Yes.
Okay, because we don't have that where I'm from.
No, that's regional. It used to be at the old ballpark. The Texas Bullpen would have a giant Chicken Express sign. It was like this giant yellow and red chicken that was always cracked me up.
We have at this point. I'm excited because Raising Cane's is moving northbound very, very quickly. So there's now a few in the Chicagoland area, which is great. I'm still holding out hope that in my lifetime, in this feeble life that we live, that a Whataburger comes to downtown Chicago. That would simultaneously be both very good and very bad for me.
There are a few things that hit the spot more than Whataburger breakfast, man.
It's the spicy ketchup. I like the way the drinks are curated. I like everything on the menu. As someone that vacationed in the South a lot, to me that was the vacation. Was not setting foot on the beach in Gulf Shores, Alabama, but rather the drive-through on the way to the trip. That's what it came down to for me. A nice Texas toast. It's as good as it gets. It's a professional operation.
Hey, any place that they're willing to put a hash brown stick inside of your breakfast burrito is a place that you're probably better off going to at the end of the day.
Have you had Shaq's Big Chicken?
I've never. Are we talking about Shaq as in
Shaquille O'Neal? Yes, just a reasonable question. I did spring that on you out of nowhere. I am talking about Shaquille O'Neal and his fast food chain, otherwise known as Shaq's Big Chicken.
I have just now gone to their website. It looks like PDQ, basically.
Yeah. So one just opened up by O'Hare here. So if you're flying in for All Out, go to Shaq's Big Chicken. I went there the weekend it opened. It's ungodly expensive for what is supposed to be fast food, but I was not complaining by the time I finished my meal. It is Shaq has done wonders with that establishment.
I am right now looking at the locations. If you are going to the UBS Arena on Long Island, you can get the Islander, which looks like that it's a chicken sandwich on marble rye.
Okay. All right. I'm listening.
Yeah.
I might have Aaron Taub go pick me up one of those and mail it to me. I know he doesn't live in Long Island, but he's the first New Yorker I thought of.
He's not nicknamed Big Treat for no reason.
No, famously.
Famously Big
I
Treat.
definitely knew that was his nickname.
Should we? We're 10 minutes in. Let's talk King of Gate, I guess.
Yeah, I'm fired up. We had 2 Dragongate shows to watch this week, and a Kobe show from the Kobe Art Center, not Kobe Sambo Hall, and what we thought was just going to be a YouTube upload from Gifu, the homecoming show for not only Konomami Ichikawa, but also Coach Minoura and Yuki Yoshioka. We knew we would at least get the King of Gate matches from that. We ended up, between YouTube and the Dragongate Network, getting the entire show. You have 3 matches on the YouTube upload, including the Ichikawa homecoming match and the Coach Minoura versus Yuki Yoshioka King of Gate match. And then the Dragongate Network was there filming, and they have director's cuts available of all of the matches on that show now on the Dragongate Network. So we ended up with 2 full shows this weekend. We're obviously going to spend the brunt of the time talking about King of Gate and the matches that took place there and what's to come, because spoiler, the Kobe show in particular, a nothing undercard, just nothing really worth mentioning there. The Gifu show, I actually have a lot to say on. That was a ton of fun, but we'll focus on King of Gate now. Mike mentioned at the very top of the podcast that, hey, we're nearing the end of this tournament. Right now, we are approaching the semifinals in Cork and Hall on August 3rd. We know that Coach Minoura is going to be involved on the left side of the bracket, and on the right side of the bracket, we know it's going to be Big Boss Shimizu and the current Open the Dreamgate champion, Madoka Kikuta. The only thing we don't know is whether or not it'll be Hyo or Dragon Dia wrestling Minoura. That match will be decided on July 29th. So with all of that in mind, Mike, who was your MVP of King of Gate thus far?
So it's an interesting tournament to kind of pick one person, because I feel like that this year versus last year or 2021, this is a year where it feels like that you have the overlining storyline with Shimizu, get all of his matches being network and the lead up and how he's been going through it, but it's not always him that I feel like I'm being drawn towards in this. But I took stock. We're at a place, there's only 4 more tournament matches. We can do this now. It's hard for me not to pick someone other than Shimizu to be the MVP of King of Gate at this time, even with the fact that he does not have my match at the tournament at all. he's on the other side of the bracket from that. But just with the Skywalker match and how everything and the Kondo match happened this weekend, a really brilliant Shuji Kondo match. It's really hard to kind of take a step back. Oh no, he didn't have Kondo. He had Susumu Yokosuka. What am I thinking?
Both matches were very good. Spoiler, I know not everybody necessarily feels the same way that I do about the match quality of the King of Gate matches on the Kobe show, but I loved both of them. But Shimizu wrestled Susumu, who made it to the quarterfinals without actually wrestling a match.
And he tried to get out of the quarterfinals without wrestling a match also.
What a brilliant wrestler.
That cracked me up. But I think it has to be Shimizu. It really does. He's been the focus of the tournament. And when it's come to it, more often than not, spoiler alert, I went 4 on the Susumu match with him. I was 4 and looking over towards, I'm flipping through my notebook right here. I should have had this all prepared for me ahead of time. 4.25 for him versus Shun Skywalker. And it's something where he was put in the position to have a lot of these showcase matches, and it's kind of hard to walk away without the overwhelming thought that this tournament has been about Big Boss Shimizu.
They've done a marvelous job here, and he would be my go-to as well, even with the Kondo match that wasn't spectacular. You could certainly make the argument that Kikuta, between the Masaki Mochizuki match that he had to kick off the tournament, obviously the Shuji Kondo match this past weekend in Kobe, which, it seems like there was mixed opinions on, but I really liked it. And then you flash back to the second round match against Yoshida, which you really liked, even though I didn't. There's an argument to be made that Kikuta is the guy that could be the MVP. Remind me real quick. So Yoshioka, he did Kamei and then Dragon Kid and then Minoura. So you can make the argument for Yoshioka as well. Shocking. The D-Courage guys are in the mix. What else is new? But Shimizu had such a dominant performance in Korakuen against Shun, a real sort of head-turning match, because I've said, and we're going to talk about Shimizu in the present, we're also going to talk about Shimizu in the past in just a second. I've said for years, people don't understand how good this guy is. We saw glimpses of it 2014, 2015, 2016, where it seemed like, oddly enough, given the current state of things in the Reiwa 6, Shimizu was going to be one of these pillars going forward. And for whatever reason, it didn't end up happening. He became second fiddle to whoever he was with. A great supporting member, never the lead. I think through all of that, he's now found himself firmly entrenched as an upper mid-carder, which is a good position to be in. It's valuable to the company to have a guy like Shimizu to where he can beat you and it won't hurt the wrestler he beats, but if you beat Shimizu, it means something. That's kind of a golden opportunity to have on the roster. And Shimizu had the great match against Skywalker. He had the purposeful match against Kondo, and then he had what I thought was just a great, not my match of the tournament, but I would say a top 3 match of King of Gate with Susumu. I was higher on it than you. We'll talk about my ratings in just a minute. Let me throw a thought experiment at you here. And there's nothing I can do to live out this alternate timeline. I don't know if this discussion will go somewhere. I don't know if you'll react to it and we'll move on. But I was watching Shimizu this week, and I was watching him versus Susumu, a match that, again, I thought was brilliant. It was a great showcase for Susumu and how good he can still be. It's the Shimizu that I've always wanted out of Shimizu. Just a lot of things about that match made me happy. And I started thinking about his career and how we got here, and I started thinking about what I feel like was a real fork-in-the-road moment for him in this promotion, which was the dissolution of Monster Express. This goes back to 2016. Obviously, this was a unit that was Tozawa and Shingo and Uha and Yoshino and Sachihoko Boy, and then Shingo turns and Uha leaves, and you end up with this weird second act where Shimizu and T-Hawk find their way into this unit. They find their way into titles in this unit. But, Mike, is it a fair assessment that Shimizu and T-Hawk never fully fit in with Monster Express?
Shimizu did more because he felt like an active participant. You could have replaced T-Hawk with a cardboard stand-up of T-Hawk, and it would have felt more coherent with the unit.
Funny you phrase it like that, because I started thinking about, the end of the unit. How does it end? Well, T-Hawk turns on Monster Express. That's when he joins Berserk. Berserk shortly after becomes Antios. T-Hawk and Eita, sorry to swear so early in the show, but, the fucking T-Hawk Yamato world main event that sucked, just all of this stuff that wasn't a lot of fun. And all I'm at, does this tickle your fancy, this thought experiment that I had, where if at the end of 2016, at the end of Monster Express, it's not T-Hawk who goes heel, but it's Shimizu. And Shimizu gets the same heel, the same push, the same heel turn that T-Hawk got, but you're now looking at a Berserk unit that is Shingo and Shimizu and Doi and Yashi and Cyber Kong. And, hypothetically, the World 2017 main event is a rematch from the 2016 King of Gate finals. It's Yamato versus Shimizu instead of Yamato versus T-Hawk. Does the thought of that just excite you?
I think it's a lot more interesting than reality at the very least. I mean, that T-Hawk post Monster Express run, like, they might as well shipped him away from Shanghai, shipped him to Shanghai a year early. Like, he was that DOA with it. Whereas with Shimizu, like, at that time, Shimizu would have been at the point where it would have been appropriate for him to do that heel turn then. And it's just something that I think that maybe not the seasoning that would happen later, but I think if you have a Berserk that he's entering into in that place versus a Berserk 6 months later, I think that fosters his development just at the very least, because you have him in a heel unit that you already have the greatest power fighter in the history in the promotion leading. You have one of the greatest mic workers in the history of the promotion as the number 2. And then you have other power fighters and other character guys that I feel like he would have gotten a lot more out of at that time versus how Berserk looked like in 2017.
I started thinking as you were talking about that, Shimizu debuts in 2013, bigger Shimizu comes into place in 2014. And I'm going, well, Shimizu is pretty young. Would he have been ready for the moment? And I think, one, you just have to immediately settle the score by saying, well, T-Hawk clearly wasn't ready for the moment. He digressed from, or I guess rather, decreased in value.
You're right.
He digressed from 2015 when he headlined versus Yoshino. And even that,
I felt like a moment. The 2017 did not feel like a moment whatsoever. No. The time was then, not 2017.
Look, I don't have any problem saying, because T-Hawk is up, oddly enough, they're up there with Eita as one of the more interesting wrestlers that you and I will ever cover in our lifetimes. We just, for better or worse, won't come across a lot of T-Hawks in our future. But
probably the best for the industry. That's the case.
But he's a wrestler that in 2015, I loved him. I love that Millennials era T-Hawk. And even by the time that he was headlining that year of World, some people were already starting to hit the eject button. He had the stylish re-debut in 2013. He and Eito were so good in 2014. And by 2015, it was a little split. Some people were far more into what Eito was doing with Tozawa, and some people were just out on T-Hawk. I was still very much in. By 2017, it just, oh my God, it was a rough watch. That World 2017 is a bad main event. And so I start looking at what Shimizu did that year, and 2017, I go back to my match of the year tracking. I have 12 Big R Shimizu matches at 4 stars or higher, including my Dragongate match of the year that year, which was him and Mochizuki in Korakuen Hall on September 5th, which is on the Dragongate Network if you've never seen it. This was a guy who, would he have established himself with that run as the next Shingo and Dragongate would have had this A-level heel? No, probably not. But I think it would have been just as equal of a net positive, or if not more, rather. I guess the point I'm making is more. It would have been better for the company than had T-Hawk been in that spot. And then you can get into the sliding glass doors and the butterfly effects of what happens if they don't go with that T-Hawk push at that time in that unit. Who knows what happens? We're literally then rewriting history. It's impossible to get into that. But it just feels like we'd all be living a different life if they went with Shimizu in that moment at the end of 2016 instead of T-Hawk.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, if we're doing full-on sliding doors here, how much of Shimizu being Shimizu will come into play then? Because you look at 2017 and he's still like the immaturity thing we've talked about ad nauseum. I'm wondering if it was something that in 2017 just it was something that he would not have been ready, maybe. Like, if that would have been thinking, not just like in ring ready, if it was like, oh, the idea of shouldering a company. And that's where I wonder about the sliding doors of situations flipping King of Gate 2017.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about approach there, because I don't think, I know this, it's not that I think, I know, Shimizu's never been positioned as somebody that would have to shoulder the brunt of this company in the same way that they seemingly wanted to do that with T-Hawk, and he was just a running back who never wanted the ball. He was, what if we pass on this play? Well, I don't need it. Whatever. We'll see. I don't get the impression Shimizu would have ever been that guy in the same way that they wanted T-Hawk to be that guy. That's just an interesting thought experiment to me, is, why is that? What is it about Shimizu's presentation that doesn't scream possible ace, whereas obviously with T-Hawk, they tried and failed? I don't know what that is. I just think the tone of the company would have been so drastically different had they gone with Shimizu there, because as you go back in time, you realize, okay, well, he had the talent, he had the charisma. Shimizu had never been heel before. He was, a tweener in Dia Hearts, and then goes from Dia Hearts to Monster Express. I don't think there was a unit in between there.
No.
So,
and Dia Hearts, it was tweener face, like
yes, a good unit, just a rock solid unit.
Yeah, so it's something like it. I wonder, and it's going to be a conversation I would like to have after King of Gate with him, because I want to take some time to like think, because I'm now coming across this. Why not Shimizu in the past? Like, when you said that, I'm like, okay, like, what are his strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? I'm like, okay, that could be a very interesting long-term conversation about that.
Yeah, it's certainly not talent, and it's not that he wasn't ready, because I think he was more on the ball there than T-Hawk was. It really could come down to the simple question of, okay, if we turn Shimizu heel, what do we do with T-Hawk? And you start going through the options there. It's like, well, do you keep him face? Does T-Hawk take over Shimizu's spot in Maximum in this alternate reality? Does he become T-Jimmy and join up with the Jimmies for the last year of their existence? It really, when you remove the threat of a heel turn from his career at that point, you really start to tug your collar and go, what else could he have done in Dragongate?
Yeah, and I guess I completely forgot about Maximum in the time frame. So you're really expediting Shimizu's heel turn 18 months.
Exactly, because by the time it's weird, Maximum, I think we all look at it as not only a successful unit, but I think if we were ranking the best Dragongate units of all time, which we've done, I think Maximum would still be in both of our top 10s. But Shimizu was the guy that was not elevated by that unit. It helped Jason Lee. It helped Ben K. It provided runway for Yoshino towards the end of his career. It provided a runway for Doi towards the end of his career. It was great for Kotoka while he was there. Shimizu is the guy who took a lot of losses, lost a little luster, and then by the time that he turned heel, he wasn't, oh man, he's going to turn heel and he could headline World. It was different. He was at a different point in his career. He wasn't as hot as he was coming out on Monster Express, because I'll say this, I mentioned at the top of this, it's not like T-Hawk and Shimizu really ever fit into Monster Express. They were good from an in-ring standpoint. They worked. Those guys teaming with Yoshino, those guys teaming with T-Hawk, that was a lot of fun. And it felt like a moment in Shimizu's career where he really could have been elevated had the cards unfolded differently for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely so. The one person I had and the highest I could have, I had 3 names on my MVP list. We've already talked about Shimizu and Kikuta. The one person that I could not make a full-fledged top 3, and I ended up giving them an honorable mention, is Minoura. I think Kota Minoura's had a fascinating tournament, even with the fact that he had to have a Punch to Managa match. Because when you take the Punch to Managa match out of the equation for Minoura, match quality wise, he's up there.
Look, I am so back in on Kota Minoura, it's not even funny. I mean, this guy, this is the guy that I loved when he debuted, and I've always talked about how Minoura was in this weird spot where he was after, Ben and Skywalker and Yoshioka, and then as history unfolded, he was before Kamei and Kikuta and SP Kento, and so he represents almost a lost generation, if you will, because it was really just him and OG Shiba at the time. But he got good very fast. We came out of the pandemic, and they really started to put focus behind Minoura, and I was so into this guy. And through Masquerade, I thought he was great. And then it took me a full year. It literally took me about 365 days to recover from last summer's Coach Minoura debacle, as we've dubbed it. And now I am so back in. I think the haircut looks great. I think he looks invigorated. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the passing of time easing his wounds, if you will, but he's wrestling with a lightness to him that was not there 3 months ago, 6 months ago, certainly not 9 months ago or a year ago.
Yeah, and it's something where you look at it, and I think it is a confidence thing, because in a lot of ways, he's been one of the people on this roster that keeps on trying things out. Like, how many finishing maneuvers have we had from Kota Minoura across his career case? I can name at least 4 off the top of my head. Like,
I'm almost of the belief that the gimmick is that he keeps on changing finishing maneuvers.
Right. So it's something, at the very least, if we treat wrestling as text, our text is that this is a guy who, fluctuates a lot, just because, Bevel Gear, Gong, R301, Ingranaje, now Golden Rose, that's 5 finishers, just off the top of my head. But that is something where maybe he has, over the few months, and with how Gold Class has evolved, you take a look at where Gold Class was on July 25th, 2022, and where it is now, it's completely different. And we've talked about that a lot, about how Gold Class feels revigorated, how Benkei really was the thing that when you add him with Minorita, there's your special sauce there. You have Hulkin, not necessarily like a Yasushi Kondo 2023 role, but an appropriate place for Hulk at this juncture of his career. And you look around, and suddenly you have an awesome infrastructure for someone like Kota Minoura to thrive, where he didn't have that last year. He had a unit that they couldn't tell if it was face or heel, that there was a mascot character, and that the guy that was supposed to be the other young up-and-comer in the unit was shooting his own angles. I think that the last year, this wilderness wandering, this us casting him aside for 365 days, I think that taking that time, redefining Gold Class, and being the tinker that he is, finding something like Golden Rose, I don't know if that's going to be his permanent finisher, but it does feel more like a finisher than R301 does, at least when you look at it. It feels like more of a thing that he could pull out than the Gong with its setup there. I think what we've seen over the last 365 days is not necessarily like a reinvention of Kota Minoura, but I think we've seen a environment now that could foster his creativity. And now that he's able to now look, and you go into Gifu, and he has an astounding match with Yuki Yoshioka in his hometown. He was the more over guy in his hometown against the guy who's been the main character of this company for the last 18 months. And you have to take a step back, and then you're like, wow, are we certain that Kota Minoura isn't the MVP of this tournament? Because you take that one Punch Tominaga match outside of it. The match he had in Osaka with Naruki Doi is still my match of the tournament. You had that with Yuki Yoshioka, and that's 2 out of 3 matches that are going to end up at my end of the tournament top 5 list.
Yeah, as I look at it now, Shimizu has my top 2 matches of the tournament. I would go Skywalker 1 and Susumu 2, and then third place I would still have Kikuta versus Mochi. But if you're that high on the Doi match, then it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. We had people in the Voices of Wrestling Discord saying that Minoura versus Yoshioka was their match of the tournament. And although I'm not there, I certainly understand the fervor behind it. I get it. The match was awesome. I watched the network feed of it, and I'm looking forward to checking out the YouTube feed, the handheld cam on the floor, just to see if the match strikes me in any sort of different way. You bring up some interesting things here with Minoura. It's dawning on me now. One, I think there's 2 points I want to make here. He's very similar to Eita. Eita was this hot young prodigy. It seemed like the company knew they had something with him. I think you could compare Minoura's time in Masquerade and even Team Dragongate and the Generational Warfare to Eita as a millennial, Eita in the J Cup, Eita versus Tozawa and Susumu. And then he failed the first time they put him in a main event. And although not everybody might agree with me, I detested the Eita versus Dragon Kid feud from 2018 so much that I chalked that up as a failure. Not in the dramatic way that I would say Minoura's main event, spree last year, that little frolic into the main event scene that destroyed everything. It wasn't as catastrophic as that, but I didn't like either of them. I thought those angles for those respective men set them back. And then Eita, I felt, was rescued by Pac coming in. And now I feel like Minoura was rescued by Ben coming into his unit. And they were able to rehabilitate themselves, play second fiddle for a little bit. The thing with Minoura, this is the second point, I do feel like he's in a dangerous position where if he continues to be elevated, whether it's this King of Gate win or it's a year from now at World or whatever it may be, if that landing doesn't stick, if he once again slides down the favorable mountain, and it's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who's not yet 30, that's going to be tough to come back from. To have two of those sort of public facing, like, ooh, that didn't work, in a way that we all sort of, scratch our neck and pretend we didn't see it. That is going to be a really hard thing to overcome from a public perception. So he's crushing it right now. I love the guy. I love the direction of him. I maintain worried just for the stakes that are going to be pointed in his direction.
Yeah, because we just, if you're looking for evidence or why we should have this hesitance, well, just rewind the podcast back 15 minutes. I mean, because you look at it, and not to be harping on the guy, but another failure, and that's pretty much up with T-Hawk. He's up there.
Yeah, that's a very dangerous place to be in, but I can't sit here and go, no, there's no comparison there. No, of course not. No, it's not there, but it's certainly a possibility. If he's in another bad world main event, and I said this on the podcast at the beginning of the month, Ryo Saito has been in control long enough now to where we know his quirks as a booker. And one of his quirks is that history has now shown he gets cutesy with the Dreamgate belt on the biggest show of the year. It's a fatal flaw. It's not one I would recommend if you're trying to book a promotion. He has gotten cutesy with the Dreamgate belt in June and July, and if he's not careful and they put Minoura back in that position, it could be the death of Kota Minoura.
Yeah, and if you're a listener and you're going I don't know if it's fair to still draw that conclusion up, how many people have come across a Dragon system in its near 25-year history and they've done this and failed? There's reason to have good hesitation there with it, but I still think he's had such a affirming, I think is the way I would put it. Just seeing him, and I think also getting the home cooking of Gifu helped out in that way. It was hard for me not to at least just think that Kota Minoura merited a little bit of mention here. Did you have any other MVP shots you wanted to touch on?
No, I really like what Shimizu's doing. I really like Yoshioka, what his output was. I think Kikuta has been great, and we'll get Shimizu versus Kikuta and Korkin. You mentioned Minoura. I mean, look, this has been a very good tournament. I was not high on Kikuta versus Yoshida, but as I look through the bracket here, I mean, Kikuta versus Yoshida kind of was what it was. Fuji versus Yamato kind of was what it was. Everything else has been a lot of fun. It's very easy, I think, to cast judgment on this tournament if you're not watching it, if you're just waiting for a truckload of 4.5-star matches to roll through, like it was in 2016 when the tournament was a different format. I could very easily see you being all grumpy and crossing your arms and go, wow, it's not the Dragon Gate that I love. King of Gate used to be like the G1, and it's not that tournament this year. But if you're watching every match like I am, like you are, like a lot of our listeners are, I'm following the stories that they're telling. I'm enjoying the matches, and there still is that high-end stuff. There is Shimizu versus Skywalker and Shimizu versus Susumu, which I want to talk about in just a second. And, a match like Minoura versus Yoshioka from this weekend as well.
Yeah, so before we get into the matches themselves, let's just touch real quick on attendance. There's only 2 shows to talk about this week, the Art Center and Gifu. We had 408 in the Kobe Art Center. This is not the regular venue, and this was the one where I really started to get to see Jay's point about it as a venue. But Gifu, 596, super no vacancy, sellout, full house for their triple homecoming show, 596 again, that attendance. And Gifu, like, case, when I was going through the notes and getting things prepared, Gifu is such a interesting and difficult city to kind of like determine what really draws there, because when you go through past shows that run in Gifu, case, what do you discover very quickly?
That Stardom runs there every once in a while, and then it's the micro indies of the micro indies.
Yeah, so Dragongate 596, basically the exact same number that they drew in this building in 2019 before COVID.
Yeah, so let me talk about attendances here real quick. Just to back up to Kobe, like you said, they did 408. That is up from 271 in the same building at the beginning of the month, which is a nice bit of growth there. And then, like you said, super no vacancy, full house, 596 spectators in the Jiroku Plaza in Gifu. They run two different buildings here. They have not run this specific building since 2019. And you were saying that show did 621 fans. We went through this card last week. Main event, Eita, Hyo, Kazuma Sakamoto, and Diamante versus Ryo Saito, Stalker Ichikawa, Ultimo Dragon, and Yasushi Kanda. They ran this building twice in 2019. That aforementioned show was October 26th. They also ran it on March 31st of that year. That show, which was headlined by Benkei, Big R, Shimizu, and Eita versus Coach Minoura, Yuki Yoshioka, and Shun Skywalker, that show did 528 fans. So they are up from one 2019 number and essentially flat. At the very least, they hit the number of tickets they could sell in the building in 2023 with the other show. This is a weekend to pat yourselves on the back if you're Dragongate and celebrate if you're a fan of Dragongate. Two very good houses here.
Yeah, and like the situation with Gifu, I think like this is the Dragongate goes where other places don't go. Venues and all of that, like it is kind of a supernova that you have two of the biggest stars in your promotion being from one town, and then also one of the more endearing stars to come together to make that. So I don't know, other than really the house show circuit and everything, business seems to be doing generally up from how things were the last time through. I don't think this is a replicable thing. I think this is a just in Gifu. We have a lot of guys here, and who knows if there's a building that can fit more people in. From the looks of it and from how the industry looks like in Gifu, does not seem likely.
Well, there's the building that New Japan used to run, and New Japan hasn't been there post-pandemic. The last show they ran was a Fantastica Mania tour date in 2019, and that's at the Gifu Industrial Hall. They claim 1607 for that show. So there is a place you can go that's upward. And I started thinking about just the weird state of Japanese wrestling where, okay, let's get really existential here. Walk me through this thought process that I can't fully figure out. We should celebrate that Dragongate did 596 super no vacancy in this building, but is it concerning that they did 596 with two of what should be considered to be their biggest stars?
I think if you look at what that building has drawn, and Gifu for Dragongate, I think you kind of have to accept that this is the hand you're dealt, really, just because of like there just does not see, like, other than that one building for Fantastica Mania, there is no wrestling industry in this town.
Yeah, there's no industry, and it's part of it is I'm so bugged out on the fact that the Noah show with Miyohara and Nakajima, and then the G1 shows, and this isn't a shot at either of those promotions by any means, but those shows are the G1 and this generational matchup are still only doing 1,400 fans, and that's a Corkin thing because Noah announced a sellout like a month ahead of time. And when Noah announced a sellout for that show, I was like, "Oh my god, they did 1,850. This is going to be awesome." And then it's 1,400. It really, I don't know. I'm having a weird sort of attendance, not crisis, but just like, I don't know. Is 596 a good thing? I guess it's better than what they were doing, so we should celebrate it. If this show had different branding, if it was, the gate of whatever the fuck, and it was a pay-per-view, okay, well then they probably run the building that New Japan did, and I would trust that they would put 1,000 more fans in that building, so it'd be respectable. So I guess I just have to look at the context of it all and accept this show for what it was.
Here's something I just discovered right now, Case. There's a pretty famous wrestler who's also from Gifu. And I think that this kind of puts at least that market in context. Hiroshi Tanahashi is from Gifu. And you would think that if there was really like the market for it, they would want to run his hometown. Like maybe I'm looking at it from a Dragongate and like that kind of touring mindset, but the fact that, that the biggest star of this era or the past era, they don't really do like homecoming shows from him when it feels like you could easily pack out whatever building you can find in the prefecture. Tells you a lot, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, they used to run G1 shows here. G1 2016, he and Goto headlined, but then 2017, which was the last G1 show they ran there, it was Okada and Juice in the main event. Tanahashi on the undercard and a tag match. I think it's even on the show. Yeah, it was him and Taguchi versus the now Master Wato and Kota Ibushi. Fascinating matchup in hindsight. But yeah, I think that's Dragongate brain of us going, well, it's his hometown, they should run there. But it's still, I mean, New Japan hasn't been there since 2019. DDT doesn't run there. All Japan hasn't been there since 2019. Noah, and this is where I will knock Noah to some degree, I don't know if you've looked at their schedule this year. They don't run shows. And if they do, they're in Tokyo. They have the Kobe number from May that I'm very suspicious of, which I know got some people's dander up, but I'm sorry. I have a really hard time believing Noah did almost 1,000 fans for a nothing show outside of Tokyo. That's just me. But they don't run shows outside of Tokyo ever. They barely run period anymore. That schedule took me aback when I looked at it earlier today. So you have all these promotions where, again, Stardom runs here every once in a while, and they seem to do okay. But this is basically a barren wasteland. And the fact that Dragongate now has 2 bankable stars that they can put in this building and, again, do 600 fans, I mean, that's more than DDT's done for some Korakuen shows this year. That's 600 fans of this economy is 600 fans. That's a really good number. I'm back the other way. I was down on this number. Now I'm back on it.
Not to hammer a point about Noah, but if they're not running a lot outside of Tokyo, that tells me they're not having a lot of sold shows or local promoters more so than anything.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I was looking at it earlier today. They've only run, like, Dragongate's run a bunch of shows this year. They're I don't know if they're up from 2019, but they're very much in the ballpark of like, oh, this is a pretty normal touring schedule. They're on a pace. I know right now, I saw a tweet this morning, their year-over-year attendance is up 19%, and I would think they're running slightly more shows kind of back to a usual touring schedule pre-pandemic. Noah, as I look at their cage match here, they have only run 37 shows this year, and they only had 3 in July. They had one on the 9th in Tokyo. They had the show on the 15th, which was the Korakuen show with Nakajima and Miyahara, which did exceptionally well, and then a Shinjuku Face show 5 days ago. Like, that's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, we're well past halfway through the year, and only will they run 100 shows?
No, I mean, no, the N1's only like 6 dates.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know that about Noah until you brought that up. That's I'm going to talk to some people. I'm going to reach out about that. Do you want to talk about the matches themselves on King of Gate?
Yes, yeah. Let's go Kobe and then Gifu. Let's talk about those 4 matches.
Yep. We're not going to talk a lot about Kobe outside of the King of Gate matches. If you haven't already surmised that there's one other thing we'll talk about later when we are doing things to remember. But there were 2 King of Gate matches at Kobe Art Center on the 22nd. The first one, Big Boss Shimizu versus Susumu Mochizuki. This was Susumu Mochizuki's first and only appearance of King of Gate, making it to the quarterfinals without having a second of ring time. However, Susumu goes for a jumbo onto Big Boss Shimizu into the ropes, just hammering him with jumbo no kachis. But all of a sudden, Big Boss Shimizu goes, no, I'm done with this, and just goes shot put slam, finish of the year. Big Boss Shimizu advances on to Corkin on the 3rd in the semifinals.
I went 4.5 stars on this. I was just sort of taken aback by how good both of these guys were individually here. And we've talked about Shimizu so much. I guess I can start with Susumu. I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it was a conscious decision to work the match in the way they did. Maybe it was just by happenstance, but watching this match, it felt like watching a guy in Shimizu who went through one really hard tournament match and, a match against Kondo, wrestling a guy who has no wear and tear from King of Gate. He didn't have to wrestle Diamante. He didn't have to wrestle Ben K. Susumu came in fresh, and Susumu worked with that speed and that fervor, that vigor, if you will, that really made him pop off the screen in a way where Shimizu was trying to catch up with him, and certainly for most of the match did not seem to be dominant.
Yeah, and I think that was such a smart match format. The idea that Shimizu first goes being an M3K member. He's going I'm going to see if I can get out of this without actually having to wrestle. And then from there, he just focuses precision point on the shoulder and the arm of Shimizu, using the fact that he has had much less ring time and build that up there. But at a certain point, Shimizu just was able to overcome it. He teased the shot put slam really early in the match, and it was something that was like, oh, is this how we're going to handle Shimizu for the rest of this tournament? He's going to take everyone's punishment, and that's it? No, I really like the fact that from there, it was a lot of Susumu going, okay, I'm not going to outpace him. I'm just going to throw everything at him and get out of here and just trust that I'm the fresher man and I have less damage and that I can just Jumbo no Kachi him to death. And obviously Shimizu thought otherwise.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I liked about this match, and it's a representation of what I like about Susumu. It's a representation of what I like about Shimizu when he's put in positions like this to succeed. And it's really just a small picture version of what I like about Dragongate to begin with. I thought the effort in this match was surreal. Both of these guys worked so hard. I was just flabbergasted. Susumu Mochizuki, this guy is 47 years old? He's 45. Same difference. Give me the break. He's 45 years old. He wrestled so hard in this match. He ran around the ring with such speed, and he hit Shimizu with these lariats that had so much power behind them. I was amazed at what I saw. And then you look at what Shimizu does. And the one thing that I have down specifically that I wanted to mention when it comes to effort is Shimizu gets some momentum, goes to the top rope, goes for the big boss splash. Susumu rolls out of the way. Shimizu does a shoot belly flop in the center of the ring. And it was just one of those deals, he didn't put his arms up. He didn't roll out of it. He went for broke and took this nasty looking bump in the middle of the ring, and I respected it. It added just a little bit more to a match where these guys were trying so hard, and I love that in the context of, it's a tournament. They should be trying hard. The stakes are raised, but it's just who these guys are, and it's great to see that, and it should be celebrated.
And thinking about that big boss press attempt, I love the fact that you honed in on the fact that that Shimizu just completely took it to the face. He just committed full-hearted to it. I like the fact that they're with Susumu Mochizuki, he's someone where not always, but he's able to emote what he's thinking and through his wrestling. And right as Big Boss Shimizu was getting up there and doing the Yoshino pose before he did the press, in the back of my head, I was like, Susumu should see this coming, because this was the finish in their Twin Gate team last year. This was it was based around the aided Big Boss press. So of course he rolled right out of the way. I was like, oh yeah, of course. Susumu right where I thought he would be on that. Just brilliant stuff. And I think that's kind of the thing about this match, that you had the commitment of Shimizu along with this really fascinating kind of match structure that was so much taking stock of what the tournament was about and what led to that point that led it to this. I was not as high as you. I was 4 flat, but it was really remarkable. And especially in a venue where I would rather them skip the months now if they don't have Sambo Hall. I don't care for this art center venue.
It's funny. It does. I mean, look, it doesn't look great. It does not bother me though.
It's something where it's the sound. Like the crowd, like you had 400 people there, and they got up for stuff. But I knew if it was like in Sambo Hall with like the lower ceilings, the acoustics would have been much louder.
Yeah. They certainly got up for Kikuta versus Shuji Kondo, which was the main event of the show.
Absolutely. So Madoka Kikuta advanced on, defeating Shuji Kondo with a rolling lariat. And I'm going to be the big Kikuta and Kondo defender here. I know you're high on this match. I think I might be a little higher on it. I think that like now that I'm like reading back through my notes, I'm looking at this. It's like, no, I should have rated this match a quarter star higher just because I thought this match was brilliant. I thought that Shuji Kondo in this match, the way that he worked it and the way he worked around Kikuta was fascinating.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I sort of had the same thought, and I gave it 3 3/4 in the moment. And as I sit here, I go, I'm gonna like that just a little bit more. A match that has done well, in the 24, 48 hours since I've watched it.
Yeah, I'm 4 1/4, and I'm debating 4 1/2.
Okay, all right, yeah, you're a little higher on it than I am.
Yeah, and here is why I love the match. What I took out of it, Shuji Kondo did not want to eat a single lariat big shot from the champion here. He's a big boy. He knows what big boys can do, and he spent the entire match trying to negate that, first on the outside and then trying to tear apart Kakuta's shoulder. And I think if you take a look at the tournament at large, it makes the booking even smarter, because now we have Kikuta and Shimizu as the one set semifinal. You have Shimizu coming in, barreling over people, finally having someone who gave them their best shot. And you have Kikuta, who has had to have matches with Mochizuki, Yoshida, and then now Kondo. He's had like the heaviest and the hardest hitting tournament to date. And this match, him getting through this match, I think it sets up a perfect way for Shimizu to beat him at Korakuen on the 3rd. Because Kikuta is just beaten down. He's gone through war for 3 straight matches. And I felt like that this match kind of solidified that thought in me. And I thought it was just brilliant. I think that it is something that I think Kakuta's matches have gotten a little bit of, haven't gotten the love that they deserved it in the Yoshida matches, but because they aren't worked at they aren't worked at Dragongate pace, but they also are worked at true heavyweight pace, because these are the true heavyweight guys on the roster. And I think it provides nice enough contrast, especially when you add in that story with going on with Madoka Kikuta finally going to have to fall because he's gone through just so much to get to the semifinals.
Well, Kikuta is having the Dreamgate matches. He's having the matches, the Dreamgate champion. Whether or not he has to have them or not is up for debate, but we've gone through 25 years of this. He's now the top guy, and so he is going to have slower, more dramatic, more drawn-out singles matches. That's just the reality of it. I know there's a great Kikuta versus Kondo match out there that is 8 minutes long, worked like a G1 sprint. I mean, shit, one of Kakuta's first matches, it might have been like his 4th, was an 8-man tag in Kobe Sambo Hall, and it was Kabune and Kamei and Kikuta and Sora Fujikawa versus a bunch of Toryumon guys. And our big takeaway was, oh my God, Kikuta versus Kondo, what did they unlock there? Again, that was very early into his career. That was more of a sprint style match. This was not that. If you're looking for that, you will be disappointed. But this was, like you said, just a smart, thoroughly worked, very entertaining match that, should hopefully pay off by way of Shimizu defeating Kikuta. And I think, eventually landing Shimizu a Dreamgate shot. But you have this match here, much like Shimizu versus Susumu, just incredibly hard-hitting. I mean, the double lariat, double down spot they did towards the end of this match, I thought they caved in each other's chest. It was just one where they hit each other seemingly as hard as they could. They both fall, and then very shortly after, Kakuta's able to rebound and finally take down Kondo with the lariat for the win. It's just really enjoyable stuff here.
Yeah, and it's something where I just find it really fascinating the way they've structured the tournament. If it plays out the way we're expecting, I want to see Kikuta like at the end of this tournament, like walk into Dangerous Gate at the end of August and already be taped up because he's had the big boy schedule essentially. Even without having a title defense, he has not had a very fun post Kobe World with it, and I think I think that's fascinating, at least for me. Any other thoughts on the King of Gate stuff in Kobe?
Really good stuff here. Like I said, both matches well worth your time.
Yep, and it continued into Gifu the next night. Yuki Yoshioka versus Kota Minoura. Kota Minoura gets the win over Yoshioka with the Golden Rose in its hometown to advance on. As we mentioned earlier, Minoura faces the winner of Hyo and Dragon Dia that will happen on the 29th in Tsushima.
It felt like a special match. You know, it really... I don't know. Something about this just clicked with me on a level. I sent you the show rundown today. I called it a hot summer night in Gifu because it was, you know, Yoshioka's hometown, Minoura's hometown, packed building. I thought the building looked great on camera. What did you think?
So I had an experience where I got frustrated with the way they split the show between YouTube and the network, where I watched like the two director's cut matches on the network. Then I was getting into the match with Kato, and the camera's getting shaky. It's like, I'm just going to go to the YouTube feed, and the building is awesome. And we'll talk a little bit more about something I've noticed about the building when we get to the stalker match. That I'm interested to see if the director's cut version had that, but the crowd. The nice thing about watching the YouTube, the handheld one, was in whatever corner that they were diagonally across the ring, there were these two huge dyed-in-the-wool Kota Minoura fans who were
awesome.
freaking out in the closing
good.
stretch. Yeah, and when he kicked out of the frog splash, they lost it. It was phenomenal.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to go back and watch the YouTube feed because I watched the network feed, and I thought it was great. I should note, because I'm watching on the network, I could see that it was Mochizuki Jr. who was shooting the ringside camera, which I just thought it's a fun little wrinkle, isn't it?
I did not know that was Junior. Well, let's say this. As a former cinematographer myself, good work out there.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. I saw him with a little, small little handheld camera at the corner of the ring during the main event. I was like, that's okay. Well, I know what he's doing.
Yeah, no, and it was funny, at least on the other side, he was getting whoever was the network person there for it at the same time, and it was just like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know it was Junior. I didn't know they literally handed the phone or the camera around with that.
I think it's the rookies more often than not. I mean, I could be way off there, but I'm pretty sure it's, Nagano and Daiki and Junior and those guys that are doing the YouTube uploads. At least not uploading the videos, but shooting the videos.
You know who I question about their camera work? They just don't seem like that they're the kind of guy to do that. I don't think Kaito Nagano is going to be the one I hand the camera to. Just a vibe with that. So I was actually
I'm gonna let that simmer. I don't know what you mean by that. I'm gonna have to think about that for a long time now.
I just think Kato, he's sturdy. He's not going to shake the camera around.
Are you afraid Nagano is going to get blown over?
He's a little guy.
He is a little guy.
I was actually saying all that to fill time, Case. Do you know that this was Kota Minoura's first ever one-on-one victory against Yuki Yoshioka? Before this, they had 6 matches. 3 of them were dark matches in 2019, 2018. Yoshioka won all of those in 2019 on TV, Yoshioka won in KBS Hall. And then King of Gate final last year, Yoshioka won. And of course, last year's Kobe World main event with Yoshioka winning as well. So first singles victory for Minoura in front of his hometown against Yuki Yoshioka.
Yeah, it's awesome. We talked earlier about the bigger building in Gifu, and at the very least, I hope this is a building that they can continue to fill and put on the calendar and have guys, have this triple homecoming show, because this all, this show felt like a big deal without the network upload, and then you get all of a sudden this bonus content, and I was very wrapped up in oh my god, a bonus full show, and the card looks good. This is a lot of fun. I mean, I think about, Jay praised this show openly on Twitter, and he's not exactly, he doesn't share his opinions on the company a lot outside of this podcast and what he says on commentary. But, he went out of his way to put over this show, and I would like to think it's largely because of the main event, which was a Dreamgate style epic. I mean, this was 20 minutes, I think was the official runtime here. Main event of this show. I had it
2104.
Yeah, 2104. Golden Rose puts Yoshioka away. I went 4.25 stars on it.
Same.
The big takeaway for me was there's a missed frog splash by Yoshioka about 15 minutes into the match that Minoura gets his feet up on. He counters the frog splash, and it is one of the gnarlier bumps I've ever seen Yoshioka specifically take. It was very violent. I like that about Minoura right now. There is sort of you want to think about it, with the way that he looks, with the way that, his gimmick is presented, you wouldn't think there's like an aura of violence with Minoura, but there kind of is.
Yeah, if you would just take that dumb elbow out of his moveset.
Because he's got the knee, the jumbo knee. He's the best person to throw a running knee literally since Jumbo Tsuruta. That should be the strike that he throws. Yeah,
not a dumb my elbow's pointing out thing. Like, I'm sorry, like you're in a company that already has guys throwing elbows in Europeans. The knee is different. Go with the knee.
Very much so. But it's a match that I thought these guys knocked out of the park. Special atmosphere for it. And that's coming through the network feed. I would imagine the YouTube feed, the crowd comes through even a little bit more. But, 600 fans in this building, super no vacancy. I loved the way the building was set up on camera. They get very into it by the end of things. This is just, in the monotony of watching every Dragongate show and covering this promotion and, trying to remember in December, this great match from February, this great match from May. This is a promotion that's constantly filled with greatness. Sometimes those things blur together. This show, and specifically this main event, this will stand out by the end of the year. I will remember this show for a very long time.
Yeah, no, there was so much fun on this show. So let's talk all about the hot night they had in Gifu. I know that on the run sheet we're going to touch on a bunch of stuff here. What did you think of this Daya Kikuta versus Jason and Jack tag team match earlier on?
It was great.
I was notebook on it. I thought I have big match Jack written down here because yet again you put him in a scenario there with him and Kikuta, and gosh, the driver that Kikuta hits to win this match, it's like a modified over the shoulder pump handle gimmick, was brutal. It was just something like that with that match, and even a fun opener, Gold Class versus Natural Vibes. Even before we got to the highlighted stuff, it was all really solid in Gifu.
Yeah, I would hope at some point we find a way to sort of parlay this Decourage vibes and specifically the pairing of, Jason and Jackie versus whoever. And in Rey de Parejas, it was Kikuta and Yoshioka. And then they just had that rematch a few weeks ago. And then here they do Kikuta and Daya versus Jason and Jackie. Let's get this for a title at some point, because they've only put this on the smaller shows, and all three of them have really delivered. That Rey de Parejas match, which was a YouTube upload, was one of the best matches of the entire tournament. And this was here where, it wasn't on the YouTube upload. It was only the last three matches that were put up there. So I thought it looked good on paper, but I assumed we'd never see it. And then it popped up and it kicked ass.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Kamei's, we don't need to rehash this right now because we've kind of had this conversation a bunch. Kamei is, far from having the most quote unquote great matches in Dragongate this year, but man, show to show, there's just not a lot of guys better.
He has a legit most outstanding case.
I wouldn't go that far. I would say, like, I almost put him in the class of he's like the best TV wrestler this year, not named Orange Cassidy.
Well, let me put it this way to you. Let's look at his tag team partner. Yes, Jason had his Bravegate run. But do you think, like, in ring, that Jason's having the year that Jack's had? I don't know.
No, because this is, Jason's been great, but this is weirdly, like, I don't want to say a down year for Jason, but he's had better years.
Right. It's just something that I think this year with, like, most outstanding, like, I feel like that there is something where it's very easy to give it to the MVP. And in a lot of years of Dragon Gate, that often does. I just think that not even like he should be the most outstanding, but he's probably going to be my number 3, and I'm not going to be embarrassed about it.
Well, okay, let's have this conversation now. Let's talk about the Konomami Chikawa homecoming match real quick.
Oh my God, yes.
It relates to this because it was Hyo, Ishin, Kai, and Shun Skywalker versus Don Fuji, Dragon Kid, Konomami Chikawa, and Yamato. And I will give you the runway to talk about Ichikawa in a second, but to me, this was one of the elite Shun Skywalker performances ever. This was incredible. He was so, everybody beats up on Konomami Chikawa. Shun Skywalker put his own wrinkle on it, and it was incredible.
Yeah, no, that was the thing about this one. So this is something where you need to go see the YouTube upload case.
I watched this one. I watched the first 2 matches on YouTube. I actually just, when I was watching the YouTube upload, I had to stop before the main event, and then by the time I came back to it, the main event was on the network.
I see. Did you notice that this was a backstage sellout as well? And it was something that I meant to reach out and ask about this kind of thing, but I don't remember a time where you look every single spot where it looked like it's kind of backstage. There were roster members there. Dragon Dia was losing his mind, cracking up at this match.
I mean, think about it. If you were, taking a vacation to Japan and you look at the upcoming calendar, I think you and I are both of the same mindset where we'd like to see the Konomami Chikawa homecoming show. Yeah, well, that looks interesting. Then you look at the match and you go, oh, yeah, that looks really interesting. And it was. I mean, this was... God damn, I almost went notebook on this too. I was at 3 3/4, and Shun was so violent with Ichikawa in a way that wasn't upsetting, which is always the fine line. You never really want to see anybody get mauled like a bear here. But there's a spot pretty early in the match where Shun throws Ichikawa into the ropes like it would be an Irish whip, but he throws him so hard that Ichikawa bounces off the ropes the way you would bounce off of a concrete wall. Like he kind of splatted against the ropes. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, this is something else. Like that is such a crazy, I've never seen that before. I've never really seen that bump. And there was just a lot of stuff like that throughout the match. It made me look at the world at large. And this is another year, and I don't think anybody's wrong for saying this, where, Will Ospreay is, if not the best wrestler in the world in the top 3. I am famously not as high on Jon Moxley as others, but Moxley's been great this year. Omega's been great this year. Shingo has had a very good year. There's a lot of things to like in wrestling this year. Mystico is obviously a guy that's being talked about for Flair Thez. I love Mystico's in-ring work. I don't know how hot takey that is, but every Friday show main event, I'm like, well, that's a 4 1/4 star 6-man. Like, that was fucking incredible, and it was because of Mystico. So there's a lot of guys out there that have had good years. We might be in a situation just like in 2022 where come December, Shun Skywalker is the best wrestler in the world, not named Will Ospreay. And it's, he's had a great year before that, but this is another one of those things. This match I will remember by the end of the year. This was a different kind of Shun Skywalker performance, and I found it to be almost sickeningly engaging.
And it's something where this performance had levels. It wasn't just him just not caring about Konomami Ichikawa's well-being and just throwing him up against the ropes as if it was a wall. It was little things that he did later on into the match where he was like, okay, this is in hand. Now I can have a little fun with it. Where did you notice how he handled the so Konomami Ichikawa does his standard rope walk spot where he has someone else's arm and he walks across the ropes, usually goes back and forth. This time, Shun Skywalker was the one intercepting it, and instead of just doing the big rope shake, he started off as softly as possible and then eventually worked himself up to it. It was about 20 seconds of rope shaking that he did, or at least it felt like it, and I was howling at it. This man has levels.
Yeah, it's really... Did you throw a star rating on this? What do you give this?
4 1/4.
Fuck it, I'm putting this on the spreadsheet. I'm putting this on the spreadsheet. A live spreadsheet updated on Open the Voice Gate.
You ought to. This match right now is my prohibitive number 10 match of the year, and I don't know anything that's going to surpass that into the very special number 10 spot. It is that kind of
very
match.
on. I mean it's in a compliment. That's very on brand for you. That would not surprise me at all.
I mean, Stalker Ichikawa is my 69th best wrestler all time.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. But it's like the thing about Skywalker in this match, and they play through all of the Ichikawa hits. He takes it seriously. He gets a deep Ina Bauer German tease on Hyo. But then you have this into the finish where Shun Skywalker at that point was just so far over it, where he does the setup, the pump handle for the SSW, spins him around like 5 times. And I was like, oh, he's going to crater him. He's going to die. This is how Konomao Ichikawa finally has taken off this plane of existence. And then no, he just sets him down right next to the rope for a second rope senton from Hyo for the finish. It was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be.
Yeah, really just... I think it's one of those matches I hope people that enjoy the comedy of Ichikawa on the big shows, and they see him go against the legends, and they see him go against Don Fuji, and they're used to the rhythm of his matches, which are all excellent. I hope they watch this. I hope they really get a kick out of what they did here, because I thought this was a pretty special match.
Absolutely. And that was after the return of Yoshiki Kato in match 3. Kato out with eye surgery and recovering from that. He teamed with Mondai Ryu and Genki Horiguchi against Masaki Mochizuki, Susumu Mochizuki, and Azushi Kondo. And boy, getting Kato back was a breath of air. I know how you were talking about with missing Nagano. I miss Kato because things change when that guy's there.
He's got new gear. He was given a pretty lengthy introduction by Genki Horiguchi in a promo segment before the match. Look, every time Kato's been around, he's been presented as a very big deal, and this was no different. To me, he did look like a guy that hasn't wrestled in 5 months, but I expect that rust to be off sooner rather than later. And, given his size, given his strength, given his ability, even though he's certainly not a finished product yet, every time you watch him, you have to go, all right, when's he going to break out? When are they going to do something with him? It really, I hope they don't abandon the Nagano Kato team. They really seem to have something there. And post Rey de Parejas is when Kato got hurt. So we never saw it beyond that tournament. I would like to see them go back to that for a little bit.
And it's something with Kato where he was such a unique presence with, as the rookie who was getting pins he should not be getting from before his debut and getting finishes there, that putting Mochizuki up for his modified blood fall and torture rack and going for it for a second time. And that was the moment that Mochizuki was like, no, I'm done with this guy. It really gave him a moment of, oh, sooner rather than later, Yoshiki Kato is going to get a huge win, and I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, even, at this point in his career, less than a year after his debut and with a bunch of months missed due to injury, he's a different wrestler. He will and quite frankly should be treated differently. And I'm still, I don't know if holding out hope is the right word, but I have earmarked some sort of deal between Kato and Takuma Nishikawa, who's still over in Mexico. I think that's going to be, a future heavyweight program.
Yeah, it's something where, I'm just now kind of putting it together. I was talking about how Kikuta faced all the heavyweights there, and then you add in Kato, you have Nishikawa, who probably won't be ever towards the Bravegate reign. I don't think that guy can get 282 kilos.
No, I think he's too big.
Yeah, they're starting to put together a little bit of a big boys division, a little bit.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. It's nice to see. That was kind of my thought was, okay, you've got Kato back, you've got Nagano back, Junior's there, Daiki's there. Okay, all right. Now you've got Tanaka coming into his own, and I know you want to talk about Tanaka and Kobe. Let's do that right here. you've got all of a sudden you got 5 youngsters again. You know, we see this in Dragongate. We see this pattern that is jarring. You know, it's almost like motion sickness and roster movement. You know, it's happened a few different times now. We're overloaded with rookies. They get hurt, they leave, they retire. Whatever happens, all of a sudden we have no young guys. And then, oh, wait, hold on. We're back to having 5 rookies on the roster now. It's exciting.
Yeah, and one of those rookies, Ryoya Tanaka, the only thing worth seeing on the Kobe Art Center undercard, you actually can just watch this on YouTube. It was the first match on the show. It was the complete complement of Gold Class versus Yuki Yoshioka, and then he got teamed with the rookies, Kaito Nagano, Ryoya Tanaka, and Ryu Fuda. And this match was all about Tanaka, and Tanaka took most of it, like to an extent that I don't remember Nagano other than his no-touch head scissors in this match. But Tanaka in this was a match I've been waiting for Tanaka, a match where he would get the focus and you kind of get a better sense of, all right, this is what we kind of get out of him. This is how he sells. This is like this, because even though he's been a rookie and he's been in those situations, it's been a lot of like 2 minutes in a match, 3 minutes in a match. The entire match here was about him. And I have to say, Tanaka really made that step forward with it. You got the day before Gifu, so you had a little bit of a preview of Yuki and Minoura here, but I thought this was Tanaka's step forward, especially he was there with BB Hulk and they were doing the opening chop thing. And it was the first time since Hulk started putting on that t-shirt that you could hear the chops as if he was bare chested. Like Tanaka has a hell of hands on him.
I'm waiting for a real breakout performance in Tokyo. I think that's kind of the next step in his evolution as a Korakuen match, where people go, wait, who's this? And you know, then it gets gifted by the right people, and all of a sudden Tanaka's a guy that people have to pay attention to. That is sort of next on the Dragongate rookie checklist is good match in Korakuen Hall.
Yeah, because he already has a very crisp moonsault press. He'll have things, and he is the one that wants to be a flyer. So I don't know if he's going to be able to do Space World or something like that, but they're going to give him enough opportunity. But I wanted to make sure that we touched on Nagano there, and we talk about all those rookies, and Ryu Fuda was right in the
That's right. That's right. Fuda's in the mix too, and you look my review of the Ryu Fuda match. Much like every other match he's had this year, I leave going, God, I like that guy. Oh, I could do something with him. There's potential there, whether Dragongate wants to admit it or not.
Yeah, no, it was just one of those things that it's like, oh yeah, Ryu Fuda, still really, really good. We still hold out hope for him. But Dragongate this weekend, we're coming towards the end of the month. They have a show in Tsushima and a show in Kuramatsu. We have the card out for Tsushima. This is the show that has the remaining quarterfinal match, Dragon Daya versus Hyo. Case, I'm going to run through the remainder of the card, and then we could talk about Daya and Hyo.
Yeah, I haven't seen the card, so go ahead.
All right, in the opener, we have Natural Vibes versus Zebra, Shimizu, Jason, Jack versus Shun, Kai, and Ishin. Benkei and Yoshiki Kato versus Takashi Yoshida and Ryoya Tanaka is match 2. Dragongate and Kinky Horse.
One of those things is not like the other 3. God, why is Yoshida in that match? Good Lord.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Big Boys and Tanaka. Tanaka's like the one guy.
No. I was like, oh, Ben and Kato, that's super fun. Who's this young, spry rookie Tanaka teaming with? Oh, Takashi Yoshida. Okay, that's a bummer. That's not what I wanted to hear.
Well, he's back at Howling, so at least we have that to look forward to.
Oh, thank God. All right, sorry to cut you off. What's the third match on this show?
Yeah. Sadly or happily, in Case's case, that match probably will not be making YouTube. But it's Dragongate and Ginky versus Punch and Ho-Ho Loon.
Do you think that's making YouTube?
I mean, I was thinking that it would be until I read the match itself. Now I think Benkei and Kato got a pretty damn good chance, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
And then the semi-main event, we have Gold Class, Kota Minoura, BB Hulk, and Minorita versus M3K, Susumu, Mochizuki, Azushi Kanda, Mochizuki Jr., and match 5, Madoka Kikuta and Yuki Yoshioka versus KZ and UT. And then the main event, Dragon Daya versus Hyo. Winner goes on to face Kota Minoura on the left half finals at Korakuen Hall to decide the King of Gate. So interesting show. Now that I'm like really looking at this card, they have a lot of options to pull those 3 matches. I'm just hoping match 3 is not involved whatsoever.
Yeah, the semi-main Kikuta and Yoshioka versus KZ and UT. That's a cool looking match. I don't feel like we've really seen that combination of guys before in a tag, so I would like to see that air. And then you obviously have Daya versus Hyo here. The winner of that is going to wrestle Kota Minoura in the semifinals of King of Gate. I would assume no matter who it is, they lose to Minoura. We're just now in an interesting position where you have to figure out what you want to do with that semifinal match. Do you want Hyo there, somebody who we've seen in positions like this before with a chance to get a lot of heat on Minoura, or do you want Daya there with Minoura working the edge over Daya? To me personally, before I kick it back to you, giving the assumption that Shimizu's in the main event, is Shimizu a babyface or a heel in this tournament? Let me ask you that first.
I think that he has the role that the rest of Natural Vibes have, that they are right below D-Courage in the face to heel pecking order. So face, unless he's facing off against Kikuta, he'll be considered heel in Korakuen for that match. But I would assume that against Minoura, he would be the face and Daya would be the heel. Hyo, obviously, he'd be the face.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I want for Minoura now. If I want Minoura working heel against Daya, and then by proxy, I guess he would be heel against Shimizu. I think Daya's winning. I think they're telling something bigger here with Hyo. You've got the possibility that Diamante is back on this show. I would then assume that Hyo is saddled with Zebrats to do something there, rather than off in a singles match against Minoura. So I think it's going to be Daya and Minoura and Kikuta and Shimizu in the semifinals, which is exciting because people can go into the building thinking they might get D-Courage versus D-Courage, and then I think we'll end up getting neither of that. We'll get Shimizu versus Minoura instead.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards that. And really, like, the X factor in determining this is if Luis Mesa is there, right? Because if it's not Luis Mesa, then I think you really might be tempted in having Hyo beat Dragon Daya and just get the heat onto Minoura.
Yeah, look, we love Hyo. This has always been a pro Hyo podcast. I just feel like we've been there with that. You go back to 2021 and Hyo did what in King of Gate? He just knocked out a bunch of people. He didn't go very far, but he knocked out.
That was the introduction of the giant brain, the great brain.
Yeah, so he did a double count out with Yamato. That was the big deal there. In King of Gate 2020, he didn't do anything of note, I don't believe. No, it was out in the first round. So, yeah, but I don't know. I'm a little wary of Hyo in the semifinals. That would just be kind of like, well, we know he's not going to win. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, there is that, and then the specter of Hyo, even though he is class 2016, he's not even sniffed a main event unless it was an entire unit versus unit thing. That, do you really want to try to have your walk-up business hinge on how people feel about Hyo? I don't know.
Not in 2023. In 2021, maybe, but not right. This year.
Yeah, but it's an interesting scenario there. Like, it is something where I was pretty set on the other 3 quarterfinalists. Like they had to do Kikuta versus Shimizu. Shimizu had to get there. And then as soon as it was very apparent that it was a Yuki Yoshioka and Kota Minoura match in the offering, I was like, well, all right, Yoshioka, it feels like he's won every match against Minoura. It's a good idea to have Minoura win here. This is the quarterfinals that I sit at, and we've talked both sides of it, and I'm still like, I think I would still go with Daya like you are, but maybe there is the argument there that, I mean, for Hyo, him getting to the semifinals is like a career high watermark in a lot of ways, and there might be a temptation to do that knowing that there's a bigger overline storyline happening where Shimizu can beat both Kikuta and and Minoura in one night, and then in one tournament he's taken out half of the Reiwa 6.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We'll be back next Tuesday with a full semifinals and a way to predict the finals. Hopefully, we'll have the full Korakuen card by then as well. So I'm going with Daya. It sounds like you are leaning a little bit closer to Hyo.
I'm still Daya, but it is a 60-40.
Yeah, more of a coin toss for you. I've kind of chalked myself into Daya here. So that is very much the quarterfinal here that is undetermined and with more intrigue than I would say any of the other match results.
Yep, I would definitely say that as well. They announced the network of the Dragongate Network schedule for August this week. Actually, today. We already knew that on Thursday the 3rd, we had Cork and Hall on the network, but as well, we are getting 2 shows at Across Fukuoka, Dangerous Gate, of course, on the 20th, Kobe Sambo Hall, and we were wrong last month. We thought that Nara got skipped over. Nara has been in August for several years, and it's returning on the 27th on the network. It'll be interesting, though, to see if this is going to be the last Nara televised network show. I could see that happening. It's all relying on if Naruki Doi resigns.
Yeah, it's Doi's homecoming show. Traditionally, everybody on the Dragon Gate roster has a homecoming show. They used to make a big deal out of Shingo's. They've always made a big deal out of Doi's. And Nagoya kind of comes and goes depending on who is on the roster. So that's a big show for Dragon Gate. That's a big show for Doi. Obviously, his freelancer contract is a 1-year deal. That should be expiring either at the end of August or end of September. One of those dates we'll kind of know about Doi's future more so in the next month or so. So a very exciting August schedule. And that is not the only thing that is on the Dragon Gate Network right now, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. I completely missed this. I think did it go up today or yesterday?
It went up today.
All right, so I completely missed this, but the first upload of Toryumon X is now on the Dragongate Network. We have officially reached 2003.
Yes, this is something else. This is a Gaiora Wrestling Museum upload. That is essentially best of Toryumon X. Yeah, the network, we're about halfway through 03 on the Toryumon archives, which is one of those things I kind of wish Dragon Gate would mention, that we almost have the entire Toryumon archive in the Dragon Gate network at this point. But this is...
And you'll have it by your 25th anniversary year.
Yes. This is a Gaiora Wrestling Museum upload. For those that don't know what that is, because again, Dragon Gate Network, I know things are a little confusing. This is their equivalent to the old WWE Network Hidden Gems section. The things that are in here, the very first Toryumon Mexico show, which includes Ultimo versus Negro Casas, which I had never, ever seen other than short little clips prior to this upload. That's in there. The first ever Kobe World Uncut is in here. That's from 99. That had never been seen until this year. There's a random Best of Dangerous Gate 2012 to 2016 upload. I don't know why that is in this as well. And now there is this Toryumon Best Selection 1 Toryumon X special that is a part of the Gaiora Wrestling Museum. And, I'll throw it to you for just a second, because Toryumon X has always been my biggest blind spot in the Dragon system, unless you want to count like El Dorado and Dragon Door and the offshoots. But this is Toryumon proper. This is during the time of Toryumon Japan and the tail end of T2P and Ultimo Dragon, still very much in the promotion with Shima and with Magnum and with Milano. Explain just briefly the concept of Toryumon X to the listeners, if you wouldn't mind.
So each of the 3 classes or grades, it doesn't necessarily translate well, but the 3 groupings of Toryumon Japan, Toryumon 2000 Project, and Toryumon X featured certain aspects of Lucha Libre. Toryumon Japan was more of a proof of concept style. Like, this was the ring style that would inhabit the Dragon system for the next 25 years. Here it is here. But in T2P and in Toryumon X, which if you look at the time span of this era, talking about 97 until 2004, that's a long 7 years is a long period of time, especially when you consider the amount of wrestlers that came through Nakapon, and even before making it to Nakapon, people that were being trained in Japan before that trip. So there was need to differentiate, and especially with the idea of that it was always a student promotion at it, that you always had new people coming in, so you wanted to set them apart. Toryumon 2000 project, of course, famously had the 6-sided ring and an emphasis on the Llave style of Mexican professional wrestling, whereas Toryumon X was called Lucha Libre Classica, and it was supposed to harken more back towards like Toreo and UWA and those kinds of promotions with it. But in reality, what it became was a lot of homages to other Toryumon acts, especially with Mini Crazy Max, and then also just ploys at anything with the Sailor Boys and Los Carros Exoticos, basically to get a response.
Yeah, so that is the focus of this upload are the 2 units you mentioned there. Real quick, because I think you could do it better than I can. If for somebody that's never seen the Sailor Boys, what could they expect if they watch this?
An idol group. Just
yes.
in 2 words.
Taiji Ishimori and the men that became the Brahman Brothers doing an idol / boy band group.
Yeah, basically more being a straight homage of the Western boy bands of the late 90s and early 2000s. Their big deal is that they all wore overalls.
Yes, and it is not charming like when an attractive woman does it. So the Toryumon X upload, let me talk about this just for a second. I watched this all today. It's just about 2 hours of wrestling. I had it on while I was doing some work. It was the idea of it was enjoyable. So the upload goes through what I think is the second Toryumon Mexico show with the TX guys. It's the Yamaha Cup, which was a tag team tournament where the winners got Yamaha scooters. They go through the semifinals and the finals of that. Then after that, you will see the opening ceremony for the Toryumon X Japanese Landing, which was not in Corkin Hall like Toryumon or T2P, but rather in Differ Ariake, a smaller building, more intimate there. You go through the opening ceremonies of that, and then you have a match from that show. Oddly enough, Mike, not the main event, but rather
I wonder why.
Well, the Iwasa and Mishima versus Kenichiro Arai and Koshiro Arai, which is now Toru Nohashi. It's that match from the first show. And then,
which was kind of the best match on that show.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's actually that one is pretty enjoyable. And then that was August of 2003. The next Toryumon X show in Japan is January 25th, 2004. And that is when you get the main players. That is a 6-man tag, Sailor Boys versus, remind me of the other unit's name.
Oh, that's Los Salsos Japoneses. So when I was talking about units, this was the one I forgot. They were supposed to be the heel foils to the Sailor Boys. They were salsa enthusiasts. We've talked about Mango Fukuda when we remembered some guys' case.
Yes.
But it was something that they were supposed to be the heels. They were supposed to be the Rudos of this. However, Sailor Boys fell flatter than flat at the debut show, and the Japanese audience liked Los Salseros Japoneses, and they became the faces of the promotion.
Yes, so that is Mango Fukuda, otherwise known as Bear Fukuda. That is Takashi Minamino, who became Happy Man, and then Pineapple Hanai, who became Ken 45.
Yep, that was. We did not talk about Mango Fukuda. We remember Pineapple Hanai.
Yes. So there's a 6-man there from 2004. And look, everybody, this will sound odd. Everybody should watch this upload, because if you've ever wanted to know why Toryumon X failed, you can find out in 2 hours. Oh my God, this match is so dry. It is so long. It is painful. And then, like you said, the match ends. I think Fukuda's the one that gets the pin. So they're doing their thing in the ring afterwards. And then the Sailor Boys come in, beat them down, and sing their song. And it dies a death. It is just, it is the Coach Minoura 2022 debacle on steroids. It is so bad and so painful. And then you have The final match on the show, or on the upload rather, is Ishimori versus Minamino for the UWA World Welterweight Championship, because Taiji Ishimori was the air quotes ace of this promotion. In the same way that T2P was a vehicle largely to get Milano Collection AT over, which succeeded, Toryumon X was a vehicle to get Taiji Ishimori over, which did not. And the last match is, I mean, it's fine. Ishimori nearly kills himself on a dive to the floor in the opening minutes of it. That was probably the most interesting thing that happened. This upload made me not want to watch wrestling again, Mike. I was so grumpy after I sat through 2 hours of Toryumon X. I would recommend it for the historical purposes, but don't expect good wrestling.
Yeah, and it's very notable that, so the other thing about Toryumon X, like, if you wonder why we're all not, like, we're going like, okay, this went up, there were only really 4 Toryumon X shows in Japan. It was something that the landing in Japan was in August of 2003, and even like this, they did not even try to bring Toryumon X into 2004, and at that time, at least from the story that we've been told, 20 years later, by that time the split was already underway, and it was more desperate. I mean, to the point that they only ran Korakuen once, Toryumon X final, and just because this is what we do here, Case, I'm going to run down this show for you.
Yeah, it's a show based far more around Ultimo Dragon and what he was doing at the time than Toryumon X itself.
Yeah, and this tells you a whole lot on that. You have that tape there that's basically pieced together. You have some Mexico stuff there, but it's basically the lowlights, and even saying lowlights is not necessarily giving it credit. This was the last show that Toryumon X ran. This was in September of 2004. So this is post-split. This is very quickly Toryumon X would kind of establish itself as Dragon Door. That's a story that that I would love to get into on a different program. There's a lot about Dragon Door that I feel like has been forgotten to this day. But the card of the Toryumon X final, 9-man tag team elimination match. Los Alceros Japoneses, Fukuda, Hanai, and Minamino defeat Mini Crazy Max, Mini Shima, Sugi, Small Dandy Fuji, forgetting who Small Dandy Fuji was off the top of my head, and then Suacito Kakatora, along with Los Caros Exoticos, Gallardo, Lambo Mura, and Murcielago. UWA World Welterweight 3-way elimination match. Takashi Minamino defeats Mango Fukuda and Pineapple Hanai. Yes, they teamed and won the match right before that case. Singles match, Jishu Nohashi beats Manabu Murakami in 4 minutes. 2-on-1 handicap match, King Alibaba defeats Karaoke Machine 2 and 3. Semi-main event, and this really, when Case was saying what's Ultimo up to, well, in 2004, it's getting all the friends he can possible to bail him out, as it was 2004 again. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kaz Hayashi, and Yuji Nagata defeat Manabu Nakanishi, Minoru Suzuki, and Ultimo Dragon. And the main event was for the UWA World Trios match, vacant. So the belt was just hanging around during this. Gato, Jado, and Katsushi Takamura defeat the Sailor Boys. What was this show?
That was an elongated way of saying it was a bad show.
In a lot of different ways, though, okay?
Yeah,
So I had to explain.
No, you did nothing wrong. It was a lot of time to get there to say this show sucked, but you have to go through it.
You have to go through it. And very few people, like, you don't know if you're going to be on an episode of 5-Star Match Game, and Joe Gagney is asking you what was the semi-main event. Name the 6 people in the semi-main event of the last Toryumon X show, and you're going to want to know that it was actually really a New Japan All Japan offer match.
Yeah, that is. Look, it's the biggest. It's probably the biggest failure of anything linked to the Toryumon name. Let me sum it up this way. This will be my last thought on it. The biggest moment for Toryumon X was Taiji Ishimori wrestling on the Wrestle 1 show.
Yeah.
Not Wrestle 1 Muto's Wrestle 1, but the Wrestle 1 from 2003 that tried to put together Hogan versus Takayama.
Yeah, it's not a great time in the history of the Dragon system. I wonder what Lambo Mura has been up to. Has been a freelancer. Last match, 2014 in Michinoku Pro.
I wish him the best.
So do I. But I think that's going to do it this week on Open the Voice Gate case, unless you have anything else before we get out of here.
Look, I really recommend if you haven't checked in on the promotion, watch the King of Gate stuff from this weekend. You know, Shimizu, Susumu, Kikuta, Kondo, and then Minoura versus Yoshioka and the Ichikawa match from Gifu. Spend time with that, watch it, devour it. It's really good stuff. And if you have anything left in the tank, go watch that Toryumon X upload, because I think, you know, there will be a time and place where I have more time in my life to where we can sit down and watch all of the Toryumon X footage and get really granular about it. I don't have time for that right now. And quite frankly, after that 2-hour upload, I need a little bit of a break. I will talk to you in about 4 years on Toryumon X. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't blame you with that whatsoever. But that's going to do it for this week on Open the Voice Gate. Thanks for everyone for stopping by. You could follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. Cases at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. I did an episode of Music of the Mat this last weekend that came out today on Tuesday about Ultimo Dragon in case. Before we get out of here, I have become a huge Luis Miguel fan because of Ultimo Dragon.
My invite for Music of the Mat continues to get lost in the mail, but I will be sure to give that episode a listen.
Hey, Luis Miguel, do you know that he
as you were saying, sorry.
As I was saying, Luis Miguel. I don't have it. This, what's the deal, Andrew? Why is Case being left honest? But I
only work in the fucking radio industry. But I love Andrew Rich. I'm only kidding. I would love to be on the show, but I'm only kidding.
Well, Case, I was trying to say that I think I'm going to go scalp a ticket for Luis Miguel in Dallas. That's what I wanted to get to. Ultimo has created this love in me.
Is he coming? Miguel. Is he coming soon?
Oh yeah, he's doing a world tour, man.
Okay, well, check your Twitter mentions. I think I just got you comp to a wrestling show, and then you can use the leftover money to go see Luis Miguel.
There we go. We've got that there. But that's going to do it this week. We'll be back with you next week talking about the show in Tsushima and looking ahead to the end of King of Gate 2023. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the co-hosts of Jumping Bomb Audio, the podcast all about Joshi Pro Wrestling here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Every other Monday, we are with you talking about the biggest news in Joshi, along with show reviews, previews, and much, much more.
So if you're new to Joshi or you've been a longtime fan, this is the show for you. We've got something for everyone here. So check us out, Jumping Bomb Audio.
Music. It's not just part of our daily lives, it's part of our wrestling fandom as well, and it has been for decades. That's where this show comes in. Music of the Mat, the podcast devoted exclusively to the music of pro wrestling, hosted by Andrew Rich. Hey, that's me. Each episode delivers a different topic with a variety of great guests, fun conversations, musical analysis, and of course, a heartfelt pun or two. New episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice. Check out Music of the Mat only on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.